So the other thing here is, data governance is very broadly defined and not well understood by most people, as I said. And you need a consensus on what the initiative includes, or you'll be surprised that your team is working under totally different assumptions of the goals. And here's the sort of common thing about blind men with an elephant in a room and not really being on the same page. And I've had this happen a lot. And as someone who sells a data governance tool, we have found like we could get very far down a sales process before we realize that we've got people who from an organization that are looking to buy totally different pieces of software, right? And they don't really realize it until the end, So what we're talking about in a minute is what is that scope, and putting language and words and definition to that as part of this project is really helpful. Not only to make people understand what you're doing, but also for those people who maybe are not like what they're interested in is not the highest priority, or not something that's getting handled on now. If they sort of know this is something that we understand is needed and it's going to be coming later, can be really helpful to get them on board. So the other thing is that understanding that data governance requires people to contribute work and time, and therefore you will need buy-in to what the goals are that you're trying to do, which we're going to talk about. So you don't want people to feel like they're doing busy work, right? So data governance is, as we'll say here, is that the best practices of data governance or data intelligence are a means to certain ends, right? So a clear understanding of the goals and outcomes are important to justify these means. So what that means is that very often we talk to organizations who say, hey, we're setting out to build a business glossary, or we're trying to implement stewardship or whatever they may want, and or even more generally, they just say, hey, we're trying to do data governance and we want to learn about your tool or learn about what we're supposed to be doing. And I'll ask, well, what is it? What are you, why are you doing this? What are the problems or issues or challenges that you're trying to solve with data governance? And it is the rare exception where there's an organization who can, easily put that into, into a quick response, right? So, and I think that is an absolute key. So if you're able, and my arrow's off here, I changed the size of it, but it's supposed to point at the why, and then you go out to the how and what, but it's in the wrong place there. But if you can start with why this is happening, it is going to be much better to justify that. So if you go back to this previous thing where we're talking about the fact that you're asking people to do a bunch of work, they need to buy in for the goals. And if your goal is that we're building a business glossary, that's not enough to get someone to be willing to dig a hole for you, right? So you want to understand why are we doing this? Oh, we're doing this to be able to get reports out faster, or to generate more trust in our data, or to make sure that once we migrate to this new reporting system that everybody is able to understand and access the data, or to improve self-service reporting, or to more quickly onboard new employees who want access. So a whole bunch of things that you can talk about for which data governance is the best practices. Data governance will help support those goals. So if you take nothing else away from this discussion today, I would say that the key thing to do in terms of this roadmap is to very clearly define what those goals are. And that will drive everything else in your project. The other reason that having a roadmap is important is that it is very difficult to tackle all areas of data governance and data intelligence at once. We'll talk again about the scope in a minute, but so you need to have a pragmatic plan that is feasible, that plays your organization's strengths, that matches your priorities, and that communicates for future priorities to those that may not have their goals in the first phases, right? So, we don't often see a lot of success with people who try to boil the ocean and do everything at once, because it's, such a large initiative oftentimes. So allowing yourself to roll out and to get quick wins and successes and all those types of things is important. So that's the other key with this. And I don't want to downplay this last bit, that as you go through this exploration, you might find that there's some people that are very interested in data quality or in you know, lineage and mapping and stuff like that, and other people that are very interested in you know, business glossaries and report request processes, or tagging security classifications or things like that. And those are all very different sets of things. But if you can't do it all at once, like identifying that these are the things that we're going to do, and that, you know, when they're going to happen and how they're going to roll out, you know, can keep the people who maybe aren't in the first phase of the process engaged, knowing that it's going to come later. Okay. The other key reason to have a roadmap is that COVID is crushing everyone's budgets. I don't think this is a surprise. We work with a lot of higher education institutions that are state schools, and you know, their 21-22 fiscal year that's going to start in July is not looking good because of state budgets. And so anything that you do, you'll need to justify and measure success and validate what's there. The good news is that a well-implemented data governance will save significant money and time within the organization. Right? It really has a lot of opportunity to do that. But it can take, you know, some initial investment to kind of get there. Sometimes it takes a while to see that return as you roll things out. So you know, if you talk about the data governance in terms of what the return is, and even the, you know, or what the goals might be to save time and money, right, and to, you know, reduce resources or external consulting or whatever it might be, or to eliminate duplicate systems and effort and all that kind of stuff, which you can get from these types of initiatives. You know, lay that out, and then plan for trying to prioritize some quick wins and set expectations for the longer return investment. But it's very hard to justify a new initiative if you don't have a clearly identified set of goals and plan and a way to measure that. All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple quick examples here. I think it'll make a little more sense. So 2 examples of kind of, you know, things that are benefit from clearly defined goals that we might kind of understand right now is that project management is something that I feel is a good comparison to data governance. However, project management is something that's just been around a lot longer, and people have a better understanding of what that is. But if you were just sort of starting in a vacuum and say, hey, we're going to implement project management, there's a bunch of decisions that you want to do, like, you know, what kind of areas are we going to focus on? What's our goals around project management? Are we trying to, you know, focus on, you know, staying in budget, or delivering on time, or you know, accuracy, and you know, if you're NASA, you have a certain expectation for what your project management is, and if you're, you know, sort of a startup trying to get an MVP out, you've got a different expectation for what that is. And there's all sorts of different ways and approaches. So clearly defining what that is, and having everyone understand what their expectations are in terms of project management, and how they're going to do that is important. If you just sort of threw it out there without understanding the return and goals on it, you know, it wouldn't work. So if you think about data governance that way, that you're doing, you know, what's the reason and the purpose, and how do we apply it to our organization, and the strength and skills and feasibility and availability within our organization. Because all of us make decisions around project management and what we do and don't do. Some of us may have very elaborate project management and program management and time tracking and budget tracking and effort reporting, and what's the term you know, your calculating progress on a daily basis, and other of us might have just very informal processes, and whichever works for you. And it's the same with data governance. You got to put together a plan that fits. Similarly is diet and exercise. So I think about this a lot. So if you, I don't know, probably none of us have done this in the last year, given COVID, but if you ever go to join a gym or get a personal trainer or something, they don't just come out and say, okay, here's your exercise plan, and you know, here's what I want you to eat every day. They, you know, they'll talk to you beforehand and say, you know, well, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you looking to lose weight? Are you looking to gain weight? Are you looking to get in shape? Are you trying to do some, you know, some kind of like PT or rehabilitation or whatever? Are you young? Are you old? Are you fit? Are you not fit? And all of those things go into this this recommendations, and also it's like, what is your capabilities? Are you a person who has a lot of free time and can exercise an hour a day, or are you someone who has to fight to get 15 minutes, you know? And so you want to put together a feasible plan that accomplishes the goals. And you're not starting an exercise program to run or to do push-ups or to diet. Like, those things you're doing in order to, you know, get in shape or be stronger or you know, feel better or whatever those outcomes are. And that's the same thing here. You want to think about, what is your organization? What are the goals you're trying to accomplish? What are your capabilities? Where are you right now and where do you want to be? And then that's how you put together this roadmap. And we all know that if you put together an exercise regime that, you know, you're not in reality capable of implementing or sticking to, you're not going to be successful. And I think that's also another common issue with data governance initiatives, is that people overestimate their resource availability and commitment to what it needs to do data governance without justifying the ends, right? Or having quick wins. The nice thing about data governance is, like with exercise, if you start getting some momentum and you start having improvements in things like the ability for people to understand reports and to get things out quicker and stuff like that, it can build on itself.